Regional Relations. So Gary will start us off with a prayer for the evening, for our evening session.
Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me without the microphone?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. There was a reason I didn't want to be recorded. There's a teaching that our elders shared.
Gary, thank you for that prayer. Thank you for centering us. Thank you for connecting us. I would like to call Bob McKean, please. Bob will take us a bit deeper into a bit of an understanding of Catholic social teaching and the UN resolution on the rights of Indigenous peoples as a kind of a precursor to the presentation from Vansey. So, Bob, I'd like to call you forward, please. I don't think Bob needs much of an introduction. He's known to all of us. We certainly appreciate every time he comes together with us through DNP or other avenues and other gatherings within the RTU. Thank you.
There's an echo in the mic. Yeah. You may hear me better if I, and especially if the fans don't go on.
Turn off the audio, but people online will not be able to hear you if you don't use this mic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll stay close, but
Yep.
not too close.
Yeah, so you won't be able to hear it, but other people will.
Okay. It's really a privilege to be here tonight, and I want to follow Gary and extend a welcome to Vansey, who's traveled a long distance, halfway around the planet, to be with us tonight as a solidarity visitor for development and peace. It was really wonderful for me at lunch to be able to hear Vansey speak of his work with Indigenous people in Cambodia through the Indigenous Community Support Organization, the organization he leads, which is a partner organization of development and peace. You spoke of your work with Indigenous peoples in Cambodia. You spoke of how you work to ensure legal recognition of common Indigenous lands, that the government protect the rights of Indigenous peoples, the different rights that Indigenous people are promised, that their land be defended against corporate takeovers, and to work with local communities for community development, economically development, and their own cultural and spiritual well-being. You've come to Canada at a most appropriate time. These are the very issues that make news headlines here in Canada with respect to our relationship with Canada's Indigenous peoples here. In Canada, we're in a time of increased awareness, having come through a multi-year extended time of truth and reconciliation from coast to coast, addressing issues of historic injustices, but also hearing voices of resiliency and hope. It's been an extended time of listening and learning for many Canadians, a time of naming truths, a time of historic apologies, a time of reconciliation, and a commitment and journey to move towards right relations of different peoples with each other. And this has engaged governments, it's engaged churches, especially those of us who are Catholic. It's engaged different faith communities, civil society. It's engaged members of development and peace. Increasingly, conversations on Indigenous rights extend beyond our national borders. Increasingly, these conversations are international. One clear example is the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The UN has a whole system of universal declarations of human rights. So this is an integral part of it. This was approved by the UN General Assembly in 2007. Interesting for us Canadians, our country was one of 4 that voted against. A couple years later, reluctantly, our premier of the day voted yes. I think significant that Vansey's country, Cambodia, has been a signer from the beginning. So it's a conversation we're all part of. We know that a government signing an official declaration at the United Nations in New York does not necessarily mean that rights will be respected on the ground. Sometimes it takes work of local communities, representatives like Development and Peace, representatives of the groups that Vansey works with, to remind our governments of the commitments they've made and to actually be faithful and follow through on those commitments. In Canada, with our Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the final report contained calls to action. Call to Action 48, that's the only one I'll talk of. I won't go through all 94. Called Governments and Churches to support the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and to incorporate the principles of that declaration in our local communities, in our church organizations, in our common life in Canada. The UN Declaration is really a gold standard of human rights. And we're committed in our province of Alberta, our country Canada, and even our city Edmonton. Our leaders have affirmed this declaration as what we should work for. And it's a broad understanding of human rights. It speaks to self-determination, self-government, the right to maintain their own institutions, Indigenous peoples, the right to their traditional territories, to a fair process on land claims, the right to cultural traditions and customs, the right to practice and manifest spiritual traditions, the right to maintain languages, the right to their own education institutions, the right to improvement of their economic and social conditions, the right to be leaders of their own development, and the right to the recognition and enforcement of legal treaties. That is a far-ranging vision. It's a vision in Canada, it's a vision internationally. And the work that Vansey does, it's a vision in Cambodia. This is important. In Canada, our Canadian Catholic Church leaders, including our bishops, our male and female religious, but also the leaders of Development and Peace as an organization, put their signatures on a public commitment to support the UN Declaration in Canada. Now, of course, Development and Peace, through its international work, also works to support those same principles in its projects around the world. And they made a commitment to tell all our members, all the people in our communities, about this declaration and what it means to apply it and implement it in our local organizations and communities. As we in Canada work to support Indigenous rights here, I think it's going to be inevitable. It's going to arouse our interest and awareness of Indigenous rights around the world. So maybe in that sense, I think we're especially ready to hear what you have to speak to us tonight. And as we, through Development and Peace, support Indigenous rights in countries at a distance from Canada, such as Cambodia, it reinforces our commitments locally. It's inevitable. The word that comes to mind is solidarity, with the full sense of that word. It's a key word in Catholic social teaching, but it's a key word that underlies all that Development and Peace does. It's a powerful word. It implies a shared commitment. We're part of a common shared struggle. We're all in it together in a real sense, not just words. There's a mutual journey working towards social justice. Solidarity is not simply sympathy. It's not simply a one-time charitable offering, but it's a continuing two-way relationship. It's a commitment to work together for the long haul. Tonight, we're looking forward to learning more about the stories of Indigenous peoples in Cambodia working for social justice and their own rights, and the work of the Indigenous Community Support Organization, a partner of Development and Peace. Hopefully, for those of us in Canada, our initial steps working towards truth and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples will give us eyes to see, ears to hear, minds to understand, and spirits to engage what we'll be hearing of stories from Cambodia, and then too, maybe they can connect us with our own stories here in Canada. And this will strengthen our commitments and strengthen our bonds of solidarity. And obviously DNP is a key part of that as we go forward. So I'm done. We're ready for our primary speaker.
Would you like a microphone, Christine?
I can speak as loud as well, but if you need me to use the sign.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks. Good evening, ladies. We'll put the teacher voice out there. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How lovely to see all of you. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the council for coming tonight and sharing with us this lovely evening and this informative and reflective evening that we are about to engage on. Monica has kindly given me the opportunity to introduce you to us and to the group. Well, I'm Christine Baghdadi, just to let you know who I am. Anyhow, Vansey is originally from the province of Vansey Sao, where he spent part of his youth. Vansey was forced to leave his country when civil war broke out and the Khmer Rouge took control of Cambodia, killing more than 3 million people, including his parents and family members. He fled to the Thai-Cambodian border area, then under the control of the United Nations Border Relief Operation, which is the UNBRO, where he seized the opportunity to take part in a number of vocational training programs. In 1992, under the auspices of the United Nations Transitional Authority in Cambodia, the UNTAC, he returned to his native land, determined to defend democracy and human rights. Vansey began an impressive career in various international organizations and civil society. He has over 30 years of experience in supporting marginalized and disadvantaged groups. Please join me in welcoming Vansey Sao.
Let me just
So talk into this one and also get you to wear this one. So you need both of them.
it's very formal.
Yes, it's very formal. Put this on too. Thank you, Vansey.
Firstly, I would like to say thanks God that bring me to be here that it is very much appreciated and very exciting for visiting Canada for a few days ago that I have visited in Vancouver, British Columbia and Victoria, and now to be here. And I would like to respect to all fathers, brother and sister to be here today, and it is my pleasure and much appreciated to share something about Indigenous Community Support Organization that trying at the efforts to support the Indigenous community in Cambodia through the development and peace support for ICSO in Cambodia. So again, straight slide by slide, you might see this. So this is I flew from Cambodia, Southeast Asia, that you cannot see that country because it's very small country. It's about 100,000 kilometers square. It's small, and this is 13 hours that I flew from Cambodia to Vancouver. And this is I would like to share you about who is the indigenous people in Cambodia. It might be different from minority groups. Indigenous people, it means that they are the natural people, the nature people that who are living in the country for long century and century, but they are in the Cambodian administration border. And we have 17 group that has been found in Cambodia, and just 1.34% population of the indigenous people among 11 millions of the total population. And but they are occupying about 4 millions of land and natural resources in the country, including a very good biodiversity systems and ecology system that this is the people indigenous community, and majority of them are living on the northeast province of Cambodia. You can see the map of Cambodia there, and the color marking is the indigenous people area that ICSO working with. And here is the Cambodia that ICSO have its own central office in the capital of Phnom Penh city. We have a central office up there, a few people to working at the national level. And we have 2 branch office in the northeast province in Ratanakiri and Mandalgiri province. It's close to Vietnam country that the side of the indigenous people occupy over there. And of course, you know, in Cambodia we have only 3 locations that to work with the indigenous people, but we try to networking and mobilizing indigenous representatives from other provinces, because among the 25 provinces there are indigenous people occupied in 15 provinces, but majority of them in northeast province. So we try to mobilize all of them to be networking and mobilizing together, because they are a small population. And you know, Cambodia now, I could say now it's still be under poverty line of 40% of the total population, and majority of the indigenous people in the remote area are very poor. Poor, it means that a lot of services are not much responded to the requirement, like health, education, infrastructure, electricity. It means that some area have nothing, even the toilets, even the primary school, even the preschool. So this is very poor, you know. And under poverty line, it means that they can earn only $1 per person for their survival daily. So ICSO, why ICSO working with the community? Because they are most vulnerable people that ICSO try afford. And this is our team that currently we have 27 people, and Majority of my staff are indigenous people who has been recruited in the local province, so they communicate with their community groups, which has Krachung, Katarai, Chapun, Kachok, something like that. This is the group, so that we have the employ indigenous staff. And I am in the middle. You can see this is the 10 years celebration of anniversary of ICSO. So we just a young organization as well. And this is the structure for the governance of ICSO. It means that the decision making is not just depending on executive director like me. We are trying to promote the democratization space within the organization. We have the governance board, who is volunteer from other organizational management position to govern ICSO for approving the policy, strategies, and managing the executive director for directing to the right direction. So this is the top one, that the yellow one. That, and then we have the development partners over there. We call partners, donors, and charities, that we try to collect funds from many partners to support from for indigenous people for many projects in the ground. And then we have the, like I show you, that we have three office. In the middle is in Phnom Penh, and this one in provincial Ratanakiri and provincial Mandalgiri. And in each province we have created different projects to support indigenous community, like the indigenous people organizational economic development projects, and indigenous people organization land tender projects, and institutional and constituency building for networking and advocacy projects. So this is the project that we try to build the capacity of the indigenous people. So what is the legal status of ICSO? ICSO is a non-government organization, non-profit, and then we established to serve the benefit of the publics. So this is the legal status. And ICSO is the legal entity that register with also the government for recognition, so that we can operation in Cambodia and receive funds from international community as the legal framework. And ICSO slogan, just working with indigenous people and working together to promote indigenous people, economic, social, environmental, and cultural rights. So this is our tagline, that we need all together to working together. It's not just ICSO. That's why we promote the civil society networking and also community networking, including the international networking to support the indigenous right in the world. You know. And our vision is we want to see the community have keep with the knowledge and capacity, and have a strong solidarity for ownership and organizing, for mobilizing, and to advocate for their collective action to promote and protect their economic, social, and cultural, and environmental. But mostly we focusing only right to land and natural resources. Our mission is supporting and assisting and to strengthening and empower. I will elaborate a bit more about what is the approach of empowerment of ICSO, the capacity and the ability of the by enabling and assessing their basic rights and needs. So this is, we need to respond what is the needs of the community rather than we plan for the community. I will tell you about approach. Our core value is teamwork, like I saw in the governance structure. We have a governance board team, we have national management team, provincial management team, and indigenous people representative team, so that we work as a team. It's not just executive director to do everything. So this is a way that we try to core value for. And mutual respect, we respect each other, even they are from Krung, Tempun, Charai, Kachok, Phnom, Khmer, and Islam, or Vietnamese or Chinese half-breed, we can employ all of them to work together to achieve our vision and mission and goal. And empowerment approach, mostly we are not trying to working for them, but we try to building capacity for them to cope with the challenge and voicing out for their concern and demanding for supplier like the government to respond to the rights holder. So this is the approach that we try to empower the community. And another core value is indigenous people rights and respect and integrity and honesty. So this is the value. I just go straight shortly. And this is the empowerment approach of ICSO. As I mentioned, that we getting to know the indigenous people, working with them and integral practitioner and in the process and showing the result. So what does it mean? That we need to the community people to driven agenda rather than NGO to driven agenda. So we listen to the community, we go to meet the community and get to know them and build trust with them. And we live among them because we try to work at grassroots level and try to learn from them rather than we creating new things for them. So we have seen that a lot of wisdom of community on the ground because traditional way and customary life of the indigenous people has been managed well for their territories. But for the development, aggressive development is destroy that social structure that we try to build it. And planning with them and start what they know. We are not create new thing, and building what they have on the ground, and then we make it integral participatory process because we want them to involve. And this is the way that we try to teaching by doing and learning. Teaching by showing and learning by doing, that we try to our approach, and not a soft case but a pattern, and not odd and ends, but a system, and not a piecemeal but integrated approach. And this is that we try to set up as the credo concept of ICSO, and all the people that working with ICSO have to understand that credo concept. And then we are try to get the result that just not to conform but to transform for them, and not a relief but just release. So this is the approach of ICSO. And here I would like to also share you about ICSO effort to support the community about the peaceful land conflict resolution of the indigenous community in Cambodia through the support of the development and peace. And you know that in each community, each village, we have about 300 family or 400 family or 60 family in each village. We live together. So, but they use a big territory of the different type of lands and forests, like the spiritual forest, and also the forest for that non-timber collection production, and also the burial forest, and shifting gardens, or we call mobile gardens. From year to year, they do different gardens and come back, so we call cycle. And also the permanent gardens, so that they can survive all on the ground by themselves. And you know that within each community that there is a significant economic and cultural and social and spiritual integrity in the community that the community try to protect and conserve, but sometimes the external factor that try to destroy that structure. So this means that without land and forests, they will lose their traditional and identity. So how can we do that? What is the social problem with that? So you can see here the picture that the majority of the indigenous people, and this is just I take some picture for you to show you that a lot of land has been conflict, that land forest dispute in indigenous community, the whole country, because of the government tried to promote the economic growth and then try to granted economic land concession to the private companies, and also mining concessions for exploration and exploitation for the mining of for golds or metal, and also some area also granted for hydropower construction that affects a lot of environmental and social on the ground. So this is the issue, the majority issue of the indigenous people, that a lot of forest has been deforestation, and illegal logging. So this is, they lose a lot of spiritual forest on the ground. And indigenous land and forests are oftenly cleared by the private sectors and also the high-ranked people, the power people, and also the private economic development who has the license that granted by the government for rubber plantation, sugarcane plantation, pepper plantation, cashew nut or cassava, that for the industrial, there is a big land has been clear and doing that. But some land has been granted do nothing with the company, just clear just logging and selling the woods, So, and this is the problem. And another hand is the community have no legal title that are recognized by the government. And also from village to village also have the conflicts of boundary during the land has high price and the companies go inside, And then the conflict also internal of community because of the demarcation of the boundary are not clear for the communities. That's why that here that the law in Cambodia, we say that land law and forestry law is more likely to protect, but it is not well enforced on the ground. That's why we try to build a community to cope with that challenge. This is the role of ICSO. For the collective rights, particularly indigenous people, land and forest rights. Yeah, this is the effort of the ICSO, that one among other projects that we support, we call communal land title of indigenous community. So this is, we try to demarcate the map and boundary demarcation and request for the legal recognition from the government so that the land and forests are protected and secure for their livelihood. So this is the way. Luckily that the people voice of indigenous people that try to advocate and campaigns to the government for development, the national policy of the indigenous development and also the national policy for the communal land title registration, and now we enforcement. So among 400 indigenous villages in the 15 provinces, now we have seen that 137 indigenous village already has been recognized by the Ministry of Rural Development as the identity. You are Krung, Tumpun group, Charai group, Kachok group, and Phnom group. And this is legally recognition the identity in Cambodia. And among the 137 villages, now we move up on to the registration as the legal entity with the Ministry of Interior. So now the government recognize them as the community-based organization, that they have bylaw, they have structure, they have elders, they voted their representative for working with the government and the local subnational authority, under support by civil society like ICSO that get fund support for that and building the capacity. Unfortunately, until now, we have only 24 villages only that get the official land title from Ministry of Land Management, Urban Planning and Construction. So this is, we need move on more for the villagers that need demanding for the land secure and tender. So this is a lot of success that we try effort to advocate. And how can the disputes that we solve in the community, that is that I am talking about the NGOs such as ICSO as well, that if we try to get the protection of the indigenous people based on the legal framework and encourage the people to demand for the government to enforcement the law. So this is the way that we try to sort out the problem. And as we can see that the land and are grabbed not just by company when the land increasing the price, even the authorities, even the high-ranked people, even the rich people also try to go up to the community territory and grab the land. And sometimes they just get one phone, mobile phone like that. They can get 1 or 2 hectares of land from the community because the community know nothing about how to protect the land. That's why now they know more about that. And it is hard work for us to do that for the community. But however, we can see that's a lot of effort of ICSO now that get a lot of result for fighting with the injustice, but through peace building and dialogue with stakeholder rather than confrontation. You know, at H March, for the last few days, that the protest of the 400 people tried to block the national road, do not allow the traffic, and 4 of them killed, and 40 of them injured by the force of police and soldier that under commencement of the company. So this is very worse, you know. It still be happening, but it's not in ICSO area. However, it's not ICSO area. We try to cope with all in the country together with NGO, and oftenly that we try to negotiate with the challenge and try to get the people themselves to determine the land rights, and then particularly between the cooperative that receive the grant, the land, so that we have the dialogue with the indigenous people that we try to strengthen, and also involving by the local authority both at the subnational and national, so that we can sit down and discuss what is the problem, what is the solution, how can we compromise for that problem solving with peacefully, and what is the legal framework that we need to follow together. So this is a lot of workshop, forum, seminar and conference that organizing, that supporting by NGOs such as ICSO. I think it's maybe too long. He is working toward for peace, that peaceful resolution, that peace, it means that the freedom of civil society, and it means that equality for all citizens, that it is social inclusion, that unity and cooperation. At the organizational level, that peace can be achieved through the communication, cooperation, and open dialogue together with the stakeholders such as duty bearers like the government, and also private sector as the private company, and also the development partner, including the donors also in country. We also need to involve to discuss how could you fund for that. So this is sometimes, you know, like ADB try to fund to the companies in Vietnam, and then Vietnam have the create the company to get the land concession and then grabbing lands. You know, one case that we can call that we call blood sugar, because they grab the land for the people to to grow the sugar for producing the sugar and import to Europe with free tax. But the people on the grounds are crying, you know. So it's the way. And yes, we try to collect the civil society organization also to work together with the indigenous community to come together and through the legal institution and work together. So this is the way that ICSO try to toward the peace building toward. Yeah, it is hard, but we try our best. Yes, like that here, ICSO try to promote consultation and dialogue with the means of peace building. And this we try to use a lot of tactics and a lot of capacity building, like what is a do no harm concept that we try to use, and not confrontation, and what is a non-active violence that the community could cope with the duty bearers and other stakeholders. So this is the way that we try to softly talk, you know, together to find out the solution. And we attempt to hear also all party, and ICSO have to be the reconciliation or facilitation for the process for that with the event. And we work with the government. We are not just accuse the government do this wrong, do this right, but we come together and sit and hear together and work together. So this is a way of dialogue that we try to promote. Like here that you can see the picture now, that the woman here is the indigenous people, even invited her to join the radio talk show now. It's not me, it is the people that we just capacity building for them, and then they can voice out through the media, through the radio talk show, through the conference or media press conference. So this is the way that we try to financial support for them. And indigenous representative and government and civil society representative also have to sit together to talk on the radio in public as well, that we try to bring. What is the policy that recognition the indigenous people? Why this is not address the issue? So this is the question. And yeah, this is the people organization that I mean, that they just in solidarity in the community and make the decision in consensus that they are committed to protect their territory. If they are breaking the solidarity, we cannot organize and mobilize. So the first that we need the commitment and consensus decision making of the people on the ground to join with us the project that we try to cope with. So this is the way that the strategy that we try. And yeah, indigenous voice is very important rather than ICSO's voice. That is, we want them to make voice by themselves to be heard by the government. And what is the issue that they concern? Also sometimes bring their voice to the United Nations Permanent Forum and also meet with the UN committee, so that UN committee can recommend to the government how is all international convention has been ratified by Cambodia are not implemented. It is not a legal binding, but integrating in the national policy and constitution, and also the legal framework that Cambodian government adopted. So this needs to be enforced on the ground. So yeah. Yeah, how is the dialogue essential to the peace building? As I talked a bit about that, and because you know, dialogue is a peace building approach that we try to promote the understanding between the stakeholders and require each party, it means that the conflict party to consider and of the interest each other for all the whole stakeholder and also the implement the legal framework. So this is the way that we try to do the peace building on the ground and promote respect, communication, non-violent, and that is the way, and also promote the interaction based on the respect and integrity of the people on the ground. So this is the way. And you can see the picture here. There's a lot of illegal logging and luxury woods in the community that the community has long protected. And what is the importance of the peace building and dialogue as the response to the land forest grabbing and deforestation? Yeah, there is generally dialogues promoted a peaceful and outcomes, and it's allow for the building of the trust and between stakeholders and through cooperation and mutual respect. And so this is the way, and this is we do the trust building between the stakeholder, and right can be protected and enshrined, and establishing land right without violence, ensure that sustainability, peace, and prosperity, and for the indigenous community and their future generation. Yeah, this is the way that ICSO build indigenous people capacity to advocate for their right to promote their ownership and self-determination on the ground. It might be enough time, I think, too much. So ICSO strategies, we have like a main role for the education to the community and promoting on how the community led rather than NGO and donors led. So this is the agenda. And we preservation of the forest and gender equality and equity and women's rights and preservation of culture and identity. So this is the strategy that ICSO try to promote the community ownership. And what else that we are doing to promote the peaceful and advocacy? That we have like advocacy campaign, and also the educating the broader of publics. We need to non-indigenous people also to understand about the indigenous people, and promoting multi-stakeholder communication and reconciliation. Also understanding the national legal framework, including like Pop said, that United Nations Declaration of the Indigenous Rights that has been adopted and signed by the government. So this is the way that we try to educate, and also the guiding principle which has been adopted by UN Committee for Prior Informed Consent. So this is the way that we try to take awareness raising to non-indigenous people to respect the indigenous right. And what can be done to support the peaceful and advocacy in Cambodia? We indigenous people are struggling for equality and better life and dignity and peaceful means of survival of the indigenous people on the ground. So we need to support and the sustainable development of this community, and we are ongoing support from the humanitarian organization and donor for the great aids to support IP for the social development progress in Cambodia. So with the great support of Canadian people through the development and peace, and to local NGO like ICSO, it is really respond to help and support the peace building in Cambodia about respond to the right abuse, the indigenous people right and democratization in Cambodia. So the advocacy of the indigenous right is very important, that still need to keep on going, because a lot of challenge still be struggling by the indigenous people. So your support, it's helped us too much to protect the indigenous people as the vulnerable people and the marginalized group in Cambodia. And this is the three components that we support sustainable development. Like I said, that we try the community driven approach and community-led self-determination and ownership, and also advocate for IP right. We build them to advocate by themselves rather than NGO advocate for them or the donor advocate for them. Sometimes they are waiting and shouting for help from UN or from international community, but now it's changed differently, that we need the grassroots movement to be more strong advocate to demand side, because they are the rights holder and demanding from the supply. So become a part of network of the indigenous people. Like I said, that we support many villages in the 2 villages, and we combine with other community representative and building for coalition, so that they have a strong voice of their networking and advocacy. So that is all from me. I think it's a bit long for my presentation, and if you have any question, that it would be much appreciated, and I will try my best to share more, and also appreciate as well if you have any advice or comments for our better work to support the community on the ground. It would be much appreciated. So this is peace building, is the protecting the future of the generation in the future that we are dreaming for. And even the challenge work, difficult work, even sometimes threat for my position, but I have to do that. If I'm not doing that, who will do that? So this is the way that we have. So I'm here, much appreciated to share this story, even a bit long, but thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Vansey. So if anyone has questions, I would ask you to come to the microphone so that the people online can also listen to the question, and then Vansey can answer. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Vansey. You're welcome. Cambodia went through such a very difficult, horrific time period. The strong impetus for peace, for working in a peaceful way, what kind of influenced society, after that horrific time period? Did it influence people's thinking about how to move forward? Knowing that they had experienced such horrors under the Khmer Rouge. I mean, was there sort of a groundswell of support for working in a peaceful manner to address issues and wrongs that had been experienced, especially by indigenous peoples? Can you? I mean, I can only imagine that there was some impact there.
Thank you so much for that question, and it is a broad question as well. That, of course, that I said, people is the only owner of the countries, and people is the voter, and people is the people power, because the opportunity in Cambodia in 1993 up to date is the opportunity for creating of the new regime of the democratization government. Long years that Cambodia is a kingdom under king, and then republics, and then genocide, and then republic again, and now kingdom again. So the 5 regime already. But before that, the people always thought that the politics is keeping for the politicians. It's not our work. This is the misconception of the people, that we try to build the new things during we have the opportunity and the coordination by United Nations and supporting by the international communities. And then the people try to learn that this is the way that we try to build the people voice, people movement, and people also active participation and active citizenship in their own country. And this is it's a lot of times needed to change the perception and the conception of the people that for a long time, and also the suffer of fears of the people. But now the youth, the young generation is coming up and growing up. So this is the way that we try to change through the new people, to change our society to be more well developed and democratization and human rights respects. So we see that the voice of the people are really much influencing to the policy change, structure change, and also the behavior change, rather than NGO is we just the bridge. And if the people, the communities, and the governments, and also the other sector are good, maybe no need ICSO anymore, no need any support. So this is the way that we try to go on the way to build the people voice to influence the policy change, the law enforcement, institution enforcement. So that is the strategy and the tactics that we try to cope with that. And of course, it's very important that like NGO like us is not important, but the community at the ground are very important agenda. I don't know, that maybe not. Yeah.
A couple of questions ran through my mind as you were talking. The first one relates to the question of the grab for the land by private companies. And is there any work that you are doing in terms of some solidarity building with the folks in Central and South America around some of the lands there and what's going on with the Indigenous community? So that was the first question. And the second, you talked about peace and conflict, and the question of Lebanon and the civil war came to mind in terms of education and the young adults looking at the world a little differently when you're only holding a rifle in your hand rather than having a dialogue and communication. What kind of other work have you been doing in terms of Cambodia, or are you looking at other models from around the world and what they've done? Sorry.
Yeah, the land grabbing is coming to the land revolutions in 2010, 2012, and 2013. And this because of land granted by the government to the private companies are not well monitored, and also not conducting properly of the social impact assessment and also economic. Not cut up the question about the land again.
Have you done any work to talk to other communities in, for example, Central and South America around the questions of the indigenous community, the land grabs, the deforestation.
Mostly we have the networking in Asia because not South Africa. We have 10 countries because Cambodia is the members of ASEAN Association of Southeast Asia. We call ASEAN, including Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, Myanmar, Brunei, Indonesia. So this is the 10 countries now, the members. So we have the networking like this. We have all 9 countries among 10 countries of the members of ASEAN, all have indigenous people, even in Vietnam. For example, in Vietnam, we have also Charai group. In Cambodia, also have Charai group that they can speak the same language, but one is in the other side and one is in the other side, you know. That we need to networking and work together now, you know, and mobilizing to talk about the indigenous issue in ASEAN. That's why we conduct annually of the UN Permanent Forum on indigenous issue in every year in Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, in Cambodia, also People Forum as well with the networking of ASEAN, but not South Africa. Question, yes, mostly that I try to learn from different countries and try to inspire the model on how I learn from different countries to do projects within my country, like democratization approach in Brussels of management leadership. That is the kind of inspiration of my organization under my leadership. Then we can find what is the different way that we try to cope with the challenge and with the people movement. So this is the way. And also learn from DNP. That is a lot, you know, and from the donors that support ICSO. Any other question? If not respond to your question, you can ask again.
No.
Because sometimes I might not clearly understand, you know, the question as well, because it's too broad or something like that. Yeah, please.
One
Please.
question. Do I have to go here? I'll go here first.
Yeah.
You know, we've always fought for our land. Our elders told us that we had no concept of owning land. Land was to be shared. But was saying that not only do you got to protect the top of the land, but you got to protect the bottom of the land too. What's underneath? And you got to protect the water too. So the land cannot survive without the water. And the trees need the water to keep the water in. Trees need to be around the water. So the land includes the water. And the land includes what's underneath the land too, not just on top. So when you go to those negotiations, just don't talk about the top part, talk about underneath. Because, you know, our Mother Earth, she has a skin. Like right now, she's resting now. There's a blanket on her with the snow. But as soon as it comes off that blanket, that snow, you're going to see around here it gets busy. Lots of work starts. Yep. People are harvesting. Farmers are getting ready. But right now it's resting. She's resting. She's tired. That's why God gave her a blanket. That's the teaching from our elders. But you got to protect what's underneath too. So, anyway.
Of course, that is a very good comments and advice that ICSO effort we call protecting and conservation of the natural resources. What does it mean, natural resources? That I mean, forest. Forest, it means we have wild animal, we have monkeys, we have tiger, we have elephant. So this is the cover of the Ratanagiri and Mandalgiri province. It still be conserved by indigenous people. Some protected areas, you know. That is the way. And also on the lands we have a stream that they use the water traditionally by traditional equipment to take the water and drink and use the water to cultivate for their rice and plantation. So this is need to be conserved. And if all the forest has been destroyed, no more ecology system anymore, no more animals anymore for hunting, traditional hunting for them. And of course, under the ground, if they get mining under the ground, this is also natural resource. Is it okay to agree for mining exploitation under the ground, and what is the effect of the people on the ground if you take under the ground, and what is the effect to the forest and animal, and what is the effect to the climate change of the world of the forest for rainforest. So this is we have to conduct deeply analysis between money and human being and environment. So this is the way that we try to dialogue a lot, with that. This is ICSO work as well. In the forum, seminar, radio talk show, publication, so this we try to advocate. But it's not a confrontation, it's softly advocate.
Thank you everyone for coming. So if I could just ask whoever is okay with it, I would like to take a picture with Vansey and everyone who attended the event. So we could all gather maybe at the back of the room, and yeah, if you have any more questions, you have on for a few more minutes.
I have shared some of people already during the dinner together.
Yes. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.